there are two main losers from the overthrow of Assad. One is Russia.
Today marks the first Friday prayers since the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. The US Secretary of State has made a surprise visit to Iraq. He's in the region to work towards a free future for the Syrian people and to ensure that ISIS does not gain a foothold during the instability. Well, let's talk to Nigel Inkster, who's former deputy head of MI6 and director of geopolitical and intelligence analyst at Inodo Economics. Nigel, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Let me ask you first, when you hear the and see the jubilation on the streets of Damascus, do you share some of that optimism, or do you feel more kind of concerned about the future for the world, really?
Well, this could go one of lots of different ways. There are good outcomes, there are not so good outcomes, and there are potentially disastrous outcomes. And I think it's really difficult to judge how this is going to go. I mean, I think the incoming power, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, has got off to a good start in terms of what it's been saying and to a degree doing in terms of advocating for an inclusive and liberal Syria and not seeking to impose restrictive Sharia on the population at this stage. Of course, how seriously one can take that remains to be seen. It's in HTS's interest at the moment to say what they know the wider world wants to hear, because of course they're going to need help to firstly recognition and secondly, practical assistance in rebuilding a shattered country. So I think we have to watch and wait and see how their behavior evolves.
But given that at the moment they're prescribed as a terrorist organisation by the UN, the US and other Western countries, including the UK, should that change now they're in government, or should there be a much more gradual process of assessment?
I think in principle, depending on how things play out, I think it should change. But for the moment, I think it's a useful lever for foreign countries, particularly the United States and its allies, to ensure that HTS continues doing the right things. So at some point, it's going to have to change if the situation holds. And this is the beginnings of a new Syrian administration.
Well, the new Syrian administration, led by Ahmed al-Shara, better known by his nom de guerre, Abu Mohammed al-Jalani, he has made conciliatory noises, as you say. Yeah. Do you believe him? Because in a way, we kind of fell into a bit of a trap, didn't we, with the Taliban, where people wanted to believe that they meant differently this time. And actually now, when you look at the plight of women in Afghanistan, for example, it's clear that there are profound problems there. Do you take him at his word?
As I said, I think we have to wait and see what actually happens on the ground. He has a background in jihadism. Sorry. There is, he has changed. He seems to be a pragmatist. He claims that his membership of extremist organizations in Iraq was a function of the fact that, so to speak, the war came to him like a lot of young men, and he joined a group that enabled him to fight. Well, we shall see. People talking about HTS's administration in Idlib province say that this has not been exactly a paragon of liberal, democratic, and extremist-free behavior. Here, I think recent experience suggests that the situation may not be as clear-cut or as benign as his initial statements suggest.
Right. And what do you read into, the scenes, extraordinary scenes, really, of thousands of people freed from Syrian jails? I mean, how concerned are you about the kind of people being released?
Well, I think in the main, a lot of these people will not be extremists. They'll simply be people who in some way have fallen foul of the Assad regime. But of course, we don't know. it will take time to establish, whether in fact a lot of criminals and violent people have been let out of the prison system. But I think that's unlikely because most of these people will probably have been co-opted into Syria's armed forces at some point, and will either have been killed in the fighting and let's not forget, there are a large number of Syrians, Shiites, heading across the border into Lebanon at the moment because they're fearful of reprisals.
And how do you think the UK's intelligence agencies will be responding to the last few days? Will it be sort of feverish activity at your old employer?
Oh, they'll be pretty busy, yes. There are a lot of different groups and organizations to talk to. They need to keep a very close eye on how the evolution of the ISIS prisoners held in the northeast of the country, what will happen to them, and talking to partners and allies across the region. I mean, the key players here now, actually, Turkey and Israel, I would say.
And just in terms of the sort of broader geopolitics of this, Vladimir Putin really failed to protect Assad.
Yes.
How badly weakened do you think he is? Is there an opportunity there for forces opposed to Russia?
Well, I think there are two main losers from the overthrow of Assad. One is Russia, whose credibility as a security guarantor outside its own borders is coming into question. Obviously, Russia is concerned about the fate of its military bases in Syria, which are fairly critical for some of its other overseas operations in Africa. My sense is that on a balance of probabilities, they're going to lose those in the medium term, if not immediately. That doesn't translate into loss of confidence in Putin leading to his overthrow within Russia. I don't think the conditions for that are there. And of course, the other main loser in all of this is Iran.
Yeah. Just staying on Russia for a second, though, we've had reports this evening that Russians are leaving their Syrian military bases. Do you see that as an inevitable consequence, or is it more significant than that?
Well, I think it is an inevitable precaution to take at this stage. The actual future of the bases, well, that's going to, Russia is obviously going to try and negotiate to keep these, but whether a group like HTS that has suffered significant Russian air bombardments will be sympathetic remains to be seen. I mean, obviously, one can't guess at their strategic calculations at this juncture, but probably Russia is not the most attractive country for them to engage with just at the moment.
Yeah. Well, while we've got you, you were talking about the intelligence agencies being busy. Another country they'll be busy with is, of course, China, because we've had today this report about the alleged Chinese spy trusted by Prince Andrew, invited to his birthday party, has now been barred from the UK. How concerning is it that an alleged Chinese spy could apparently infiltrate the highest echelons of society?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think firstly, the term Chinese spy is being used a little bit loosely. This looks to me more like United Front activity, and indeed the United Front Work Department has been identified as the organization to which this person was responding.
Well, that's a wing of the Chinese Communist Party.
It's a wing of the Chinese Communist Party. Its purpose is to, so to speak, win friends and influence people, neutralize opponents, and attract those who are neutral to become more friendly and positive towards China. And it does that through a whole spectrum of operations, from the overt to the totally covert. Obviously, this particular instance puts it at the more covert end. But was this primarily an information gathering operation? Probably not. I think it's more an influence gathering undertaking at the moment.
Could it have nevertheless, though, damaged British interests?
Well, of course, yes, absolutely it could, because whilst Prince Andrew obviously in present circumstances has little utility as a source of information. Nonetheless, he remains well connected within the upper echelons of British society. He knows a lot of people who could be useful to China. And of course, China is always looking to try to burnish its image, its public presentation in every country in the world, including the UK, and finding well-connected members of the elite who might be prepared to speak favorably towards China is in and of itself an important objective for the Chinese Communist Party.